Welcome to Daily Variety, your daily dose of news and analysis for entertainment industry insiders. It's Thursday, December 18th, 2025. I'm your host, Cynthia Littleton. I am co-editor-in-chief of Variety alongside Ramin Satuda. I'm in LA, he's in New York, and Variety has reporters around the world covering the business of entertainment. In today's episode, we'll unpack the YouTube Oscars deal that has rocked Hollywood's world. Variety's Clayton Davis and Michael Schneider explain what they know about what went down, and they debate whether it's a good idea. And then Mark Malkin brings us a fun and slightly risque interview with one of the heartthrobs of the moment, heated rivalry star Connor Storrie. But before we get to that, here are a few headlines just in this morning that you need to know. The first is that Daily Variety is going to take a winter break after today's episode. We'll hibernate for a bit and be back with fresh headlines, questions, and quips on January 5th. We started this podcast venture on Bastille Day, July 14th. Vivre Daily Variety. CBS News is promising us more town halls hosted by editor-in-chief Barry Weiss. They're promising a series presented under the banner Things That Matter. Future guests will include Vice President J.D. Vance, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman, and Maryland Governor Wes Moore. Netflix's sports coverage just got a whole lot smarter. ESPN alumnus Elle Duncan is moving to the streamer. She'll serve as a host across the company's lineup of live events. Her first outing will be early next year when free solo climber Alex Honnold attempts to scale the tallest building in Taipei. All of these stories and so much more can be found on Variety.com right now. And now it's time for conversations with Variety journalists about news and trends in show business. Clayton Davis, Variety's chief awards editor, and Michael Schneider, television editor, join me for a robust discussion of what it all means that the Academy Awards will move to YouTube in 2029. We don't agree on everything, but we do agree that the deal is a masterstroke for YouTube CEO Neal Mohan. Clayton Davis and Michael Schneider, thanks for joining me.
Hello, hello.
No rest for the weary. Wednesday morning's crazy curveball was, hello, YouTube, the Oscars, the pinnacle of award season, is moving to YouTube in 2029. That took a minute to sink in when I saw that headline hit my inbox. Clayton, what was your first reaction when you saw this news?
The Academy had been in close conversations for reporting by Variety. With YouTube had put in an offer. We know NBC was very, very interested, and ABC was still at the table. But I think what the Academy needs, and it's the thing that people like myself have been saying for multiple decades, we don't care about a long show. We want a good show. We want the show to evolve. Everyone's consuming content differently. We need to meet the potential watchers where they are. I don't subscribe to that movies are dying. I just think we're not meeting the consumers where they can find them. So this is a good way to do that. And I think it really does offer up a lot of way more pros than any potential cons.
Mike, what about you?
Yeah, I think this is a little more dangerous for the Academy to go because you're leaving a network that has infrastructure already in place that knows how to put on a show like this. You're going to YouTube that doesn't have any sort of infrastructure like this whatsoever. Now, granted, they have 3 years to put something together, but essentially this sounds like you're turning over the keys completely now to the Academy to produce the Oscars. There's pros and cons there, but the con being there's a reason why there's been a back and forth over the years between Disney and Oscars over the best way to produce the shows. If you give all that power to just one entity like the Academy, you could end up with a lesser show.
You raise a good point. From an AMPAS perspective, though, that might have been very attractive. The idea of like you will streamline it somewhat in that you're not going to have that traditional checks and balances of network, studio, producer. My first thought was at this moment in time, YouTube is so global. It is becoming like a household utility in so many countries. And so now this will answer the question, where are the Oscars? The Oscars are on YouTube. That will be a significant component. The other thing that stood out to me was that YouTube is more Switzerland than Disney ABC is in the Oscar race. YouTube doesn't have a studio, does not appear to be in the mix for a studio anytime soon, although we wouldn't have thought that they would play for Oscar rights just a few years ago either. For years, there were real restrictions on who could advertise in the Oscar telecast because the Academy was so desirous of not looking like it was favoring any studio or advertiser and all. Do you think that will have any significant impact on what the Academy might be able to do with different specials, different rights, because you're not in a situation of, oh, are we favoring Disney titles?
You hit the nail on the head. In the sense of is Switzerland, because listen, we knew at some point Netflix was in the mix, and if they went to Netflix, I think there would have been upheaval in this town.
For that same reason, they're heavily invested, and we all know Netflix really, really, really wants to win a Best Picture Oscar.
It's also freedom to, with more promotions, like they get more creative control that way. It really takes the guardrails off. I don't know if Ceremony 101 is going to be like the definitive one, but I think we are going through an evolution of media. I think there is a way to do this as a blend that we can still have it feel traditional and the way that we know the Oscars to be, but also be able to meet people where they are. The big thing that's going to be interesting, they can't hide behind viewership anymore in terms of we're going to know instantly how many people are watching. But in 3 years, we don't even know if YouTube is going to be what we think YouTube is right now. They're evolving. And I have to make this point, they're not just taking the Oscar telecast, they're taking the Oscars as a whole. They're going to digitize their archives. They're going to work with them on streaming the Governor's Awards, which we love to see. The SciTech Awards, you get artisans. They're due up there. I'm hopelessly optimistic about the possibility of this.
Clayton, I could tell that you'd been turning these ideas over in your head because you came out with a very strong column not too long after the news broke, and you say, quote, "This isn't the Oscars selling out. This is the Oscars finally being set free," end quote.
We've never cared about how long the show is. We just want a good show. If it's 4 hours, if it's a 4-hour great show, no one's going to be mad about that. But
We'll also be mad at that. Clayton, the 4-hour show is ridiculous. I think we don't want to go too overboard.
for
But I
sure.
think you guys are right in that this is all about independence and this is about the Academy just tiring of having to fight Disney over the parameters. And they would have to fight NBC Universal if it ended up being them. They would have to fight Netflix. I think in this case, they get to do whatever they want. This is the freedom. They probably got more money than they ever would have gotten from NBC Universal and Disney at this point because Disney wasn't going to offer as much money as they used to.
Mike, let me ask you the other side of this question. Obviously, this is a loss for ABC. It's something that they always built a lot of first quarter promotion around. What do you think this means for ABC?
So I think they do. They were thinking it was going to NBC. They really were convinced, and they were kind of bracing themselves for that because they weren't offering the same license fee as before, and I don't think the Academy was ever going to go for a haircut. So they were braced for this, and they smartly stole away the Grammys from CBS. So they do have a major award show that's still coming, and they're finally now airing the Super Bowl again for the first time in more than 15 years. So they still have a lot of big events, but yeah, this is the marquee event, one of the biggest entertainment shows of the year.
In the three-dimensional chess game that is media, you do wonder if Dana Walden and the Disney team, they really played hard for Grammys with the understanding that the Academy was going to want a big old increase for
Yeah,
the
you could
Oscars.
see how it was kind of like big event insurance. Now they still have a big show. ABC still has the Oscars for 3 more, including the big 100th. So in some ways, it's like almost the series finale of the Oscars, that final big 100th event, and then who knows what happens after that. I already have an idea. The first season of the new Oscars on YouTube, at the very start of the show, Mr. Beast offers $1 million to any contender who just drops out of the race right then and there.
I think the same way like Netflix came onto the scene with House of Cards and like people just really didn't understand what they were doing. YouTube has branded itself as TV.
We're still waiting to see what the TV Academy does with the Emmys, and I do wonder now if something like this is going to convince them to also do something that's a little out of the box, a little revolutionary. This may be something that now forces them to think, well, we got to do our own YouTube deal, or we got to do our own like crazy new deal. So I'll be interested to see. I don't think they're just going to go back to a traditional wheel format the way they've had for the past, decades.
There is no world in which Neal Mohan is not getting a heavy, heavy pitch right now for that Emmy deal. That I will say with just on informed speculation here. I have missed no opportunity to remind people that Neal Mohan was on the cover of Variety in March of this past year, and he's been making us look good for it ever since. I really don't think this is an exaggeration. I don't think this would have happened 5 years ago, but that just tells you how much YouTube has evolved, especially YouTube TV. YouTube TV is a virtual cable operator that has strengthened Neal Mohan and relations with people at Google and YouTube. That has definitely strengthened their ties to traditional Hollywood because they're doing carriage deals. As we know, we saw a big battle between Disney and YouTube, a carriage fight that lasted, almost 2 weeks. This does show that YouTube, for all its newness, is becoming more and more integrated into the more traditional fabric of television and film. What a world, what a world. I am so grateful to have great colleagues like you that are so insightful and can turn out columns in record time.
I think Mike should win an Oscar.
Now, I was
He
just going to
deserves
say,
one.
Mohan, Mo Oscars.
And now here's Mark Malkin with his chat with Connor Storrie. The heated rivalry star takes Mark through his meteoric rise over the past few months, thanks to the success of the HBO Max hockey drama.
Thanks, Cynthia. Heated Rivalry is the show of the moment. An adaptation of Rachel Reed's queer romance novel series Game Changers, the series stars Connor Storrie as Ilya Rozanov and Hudson Williams as Shane Hollander. The two men are not only professional hockey champions, but they've also been having a hot and steamy and very secretive years-long affair. When the first 2 episodes dropped over Thanksgiving weekend on HBO Max, the streamer acquired the series from Canadian streamer Crave, the show became an instant hit with word of the soapy queer drama exploding on social media. Memes and GIFs zeroed in on the romance, the sports, and more often than not, the sex. I caught up with Storrie just the other day from his Los Angeles area home.
Like, I didn't even know that my butt was a topic of conversation until, I had so many random people send screenshots of my ass on Twitter.
Storrie, who grew up in Odessa, Texas, was just another actor living paycheck to paycheck when he booked Heated Rivalry. In fact, he was on the verge of losing his waitering job at Laurel Grill in Los Angeles when the offer to play Rozanov came in.
He sat me down being like, this is not acceptable. Like, this is a final warning. If anything like this ever happens again, like, you're out.
Minutes later, his agent called to tell him he booked Heated Rivalry.
Yeah, I worked a few more shifts and then was kind of like, see ya.
The chemistry between Storrie and Williams is electric. The two felt it right away during their chemistry read. While they work closely with an intimacy coordinator for their sex scenes, Storrie says there is some improvising because the two men are so comfortable with each other.
So I'm like, so let's go all the way. I'll wear the least amount of clothes. I'll do the most amount of kisses. And it literally just it made me and Hudson be like, is it cool if I touch you here? And I'm like, yeah, touch me anywhere. I don't care. So all those little intricate kisses, touches in between moments, a lot of that is just us organically feeding into that moment.
Just an hour or two before our conversation, HBO Max and Crave announced that Heated Rivalry was renewed for a second season.
Those books are literally sold out everywhere. They're like #1 on some of the book charts, which is crazy. I think that proves that these are obviously really well constructed stories that a lot of people are really into. So I think the only way to make this make sense is to stick to the books, and also honor the fandom of the people who are really spearheading this whole thing.
One person who hasn't watched the entirety of the first season is Storrie's mother, for good reason.
She was like, I can't watch the sex scenes yet. And I was like, you don't ever have to watch the sex scenes. Like, I don't need you to watch that.
For more of my interview with Connor Storrie, head over to Variety.com. And coming tomorrow, my first interview with his co-star, Hudson Williams. Happy holidays.
As we close out today's episode, here's a few things we're watching for. Don't miss Clayton Davis's latest column, Why Oscar Voters Love Villains, Just Not Truly Evil Ones. Don't forget to check out Variety's V120 list of the industry's most powerful executive leaders. You'll find that list popping up early next week on Variety.com. And on January 2nd, don't miss the rollout of Variety's 10 Directors to Watch feature. These are the Helmer names you'll need to know in the coming years. We love to hear from our listeners, so please send thoughts, gripes, and other feedback about Daily Variety to podcasts@variety.com. Before we go, congrats to the 105 employees at UTA that have been promoted. The talent agency unveiled promotions en masse at departments across the agency, Clutch Sports, Media Link, and other units. Thanks for listening. This episode was written and reported by me, Cynthia Littleton, with contributions from Clayton Davis, Michael Schneider, and Mark Malkin. Sticks, Nicks, Hick Picks. Please leave us a review at the podcast platform of your choice, and please tune in on January 5th for a fresh episode of Daily Variety. And happy holidays, everyone. Blessed be us all.